Welcome back. We are going to do another fun English lesson. Hopefully this one's going to be quick. So those of you who struggle through the longer ones, this one shouldn't take too long. Today we're going to be talking about plagiarism, and then we're going to talk about how to avoid plagiarism, because plagiarism is one of those things that if you do it, the results of plagiarism get worse and worse the higher up you get. So you can end up failing. You can end up getting kicked out of school, especially in college. If you do it, you can be removed from the school. It tarnishes your reputation. It's definitely something that you do not want to do. Before we start, remember, as always, that these are required notes, and I will be asking to see them. So make sure that you bring them in on the day that they're due. A little bit of a SpongeBob theme here just because I was bored while I was making this and I thought, why not? So you can see Mr. Krabs over here holding up his money, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Before though, let's just go over our lesson objectives. So lesson objectives are for you to be able to understand how to define and recognize possible acts of plagiarism. So you should know what plagiarism is and how to recognize it. Second, you should know how to avoid plagiarism. So knowing that it's a bad thing that you don't want to do, you need to know how not to do it. And then third, you should also be able to recognize resources for assisting in the creation of a bibliography, because a bibliography or a works cited page is really important to avoiding plagiarism. So I'll give you some extra resources for that. All about plagiarism and why we avoid it is that plagiarism is theft. And you can see down there in the Mr. Krabs picture now it says dishonesty doesn't pay. We know who Mr. Krabs is, not the most honest of all people. And plagiarism is a form of dishonesty. It's a form of stealing somebody else's work and calling it your own. Sometimes this is work that people have put years of their life into and spent their own money on, and you can't just take it and say, well, this is my work now. You have to give them credit. So plagiarism, a definition of it is using someone else's words, thoughts, and or ideas as your own. So it's not just words, it's thoughts. If somebody has an original thought or idea, you have to give them credit, right? Thoughts and ideas are also part of plagiarism, right? So you can commit plagiarism by buying, stealing, or borrowing or lending a paper or some other work, right? Those people who lend out their packets or lend out their papers for other people to see, we call it cheating, but cheating is a form of plagiarism. Lending a paper to somebody so that they can put their name on it is definitely a form of plagiarism. And if you are the lender, you are just as guilty as the person who is using it. Second, you can hire or ask somebody else to do your own work. Obviously, that's also a form of plagiarism, because if somebody hires somebody or asks somebody to do their work, then they're taking credit for the work that's getting turned in, which isn't actually their work. So that is also a form of plagiarism. And third, and probably the one that you'll be dealing with most in terms of paper writing, is copying large sections of a text or someone else's ideas from that text. So plagiarism can be either copying word for word, or it can just be taking their ideas and putting it down without giving them credit. So even if you're just paraphrasing what they said, you still need to cite your source. Let's talk a little bit about how to avoid plagiarism. How do we not do this thing that we're not supposed to do? One big way to do that is to always mark somebody else's words with quotation marks. When you're taking notes, put quotation marks around the words that you're writing down. When you're writing a paper, put quotation marks around the words that you're writing down that come directly from their work. Always, always credit the source of your information when you're researching, writing, or presenting. Even if you're not copying down words, you need to tell the reader, or tell the audience who came up with this idea. Unless it's your own idea, unless it's your own information, or it's something that everybody just knows anyway, you need to give credit to the source for whatever it is. And that's during research, that's during writing, and that's also during presenting. You need to cite sources when you're presenting as well. Lastly, you always make and provide a bibliography for all of your sources. So just assume. You shouldn't even need to ask a teacher from here on out. If you're doing any kind of research, then you provide a works cited page or a bibliography. It's just expected of you. Don't ask the teacher, do I need it? Just do it. The teacher will look at you and they will be amazed at how sophisticated you've become with your work. So it looks good. Even if the teacher doesn't end up wanting it, just assume that they do from now until infinity. Let's talk a little bit about MLA bibliographies. There are different styles of bibliographies. We might also call these works cited pages. We're going to be using MLA. You might also use APA in other classes or CMS, but for this class and for many other classes, you'll use MLA. So generally, all bibliographies need to list the information from whatever text you're using in the following order. So you list the author, and you always start with the last name and then the first name, a comma between. Then you list the title of the source. Then you list the title of the container, and that's especially if you're reading like an article out of a magazine. So the title of the source is the article, the title of the container is the magazine. You list other contributors, then you list the version, then you list the number, then you list the publisher, and then the publication date. So one thing to know about this is you're not always going to be able to find all of these things. You need to make sure that those things don't exist. So if you're sure there's no version, then you skip it. Or if you're sure there's no number, then you skip it. But you only skip if you're sure that it doesn't exist. Otherwise, you need all of these parts. Oh, and finally, sorry, location. You need to make sure that you list the location. Again, skipping only what you can't find that you're positive isn't there. So let me show you 3 examples. Here's an example of a book, what a book might look like. So this is our book by SpongeBob. So you've got SquarePants, comma, SpongeBob, period. And the title of the book is My Spatula and Me. And it's published by Bikini Bottom Publishing Company in 2015. So in this case, that was all the information that was available for this book. Notice that the punctuation, I've got commas and periods and underlines, and all of those are important. So make sure that you put those in the correct spot. And then also notice the hanging indentation, that the first line is not indented and every line subsequent to that is indented. So it's backwards from a regular paragraph. Here's an example of a journal or a magazine. This one's by Patrick. Again, we've got his last name first, star, comma, Patrick, period. And the title of the article in the magazine is I'm Not As Dumb As You Think. And then this is out of a magazine called C-Star Monthly. And it's volume 7, number 3. So that's all information that you would find in the magazine if you look carefully. Published in 2004. And then it also tells us the location is pages 62 to 68 in this particular magazine. Again, notice the punctuation and the hanging indentation. Last, here's the website example. In this case, you'll notice that you didn't have to write down the URL. I am not going to require you to write down URLs. Teachers may ask you to write down URLs. I do not want you to. So this one's by Krabs, Mr. Krabs, and the title of the page is How to Build a Restaurant Franchise from Scratch. This is from a website called eHow, and it was created on the 4th of May, 2011. Again, notice the punctuation and the hanging indentation. So something to be aware of is that your work will vary. Depending on the sources that you're using, you'll be able to find different pieces of information. You need to be as thorough as you possibly can with your bibliography so that if I need to, I can find the source again. You might struggle. You might need a little bit more help. And if that's the case, here are 2 resources that you can use. The first resource is the OWL at Purdue's MLA guide, and there's a link below. You can copy that link down, or you can just Google OWL at Purdue MLA guide, and you'll be able to find it. It gives you more information than I could ever give you on this subject. You'll be able to find anything there. The second one is Citation Machine. Citation Machine tends to be less accurate, and you need to be careful about using it. But you can just go to citationmachine.net, and that can help you make sure that it's creating an MLA citation for you. Just be aware that accuracy is your responsibility. So if I find a mistake in your bibliography or your works cited page, it's up to you. So if Citation Machine makes that mistake, you're ultimately the person responsible for that. So just be aware of that.